welcome. This is our Wheel and Anchor webinar about our LiveAway program in Sicily, the second part of our two parts in Sicily. The first part that we introduced last month, or actually I think we introduced it already in May, was to Syracuse, to Ortigia on the east coast of Sicily. So Sicily is a little bit like a triangle. I'll show you on the map in a moment. This is the second part in Cefalù, which is on the north coast, happening in March and April of next year. And so I just want to say a couple of words about Wheel and Anchor. We are a community of like-minded travelers from all parts of Canada. Our philosophy, the mission when we started this enterprise, was that we bring travelers together from all parts of the country who, have a very like-minded, a very Canadian perspective on what travel means. And people appreciate the fact that we have a slower pace on our trips, that we take time to, try and meet the locals, try and understand the culture, try and ask the questions and sample things in a way that allows us to really understand better what this world is all about, and of course have a great time along the way. So that's what we're all about here at Wheel and Anchor, and the goal inside of all of that. And here a wonderful shot. This was a group in Madeira this past February on one of our LiveAways. Is that you become well-traveled. And I know most of our members are already well-traveled. We've been to all parts of the world. But our vision of well-traveled is, again, by spending more time, we really get to understand and get to know a place. And our relationship is very different than, when you pop through on a whirlwind tour on a cruise or something like that. And so, we also forged some great friendships. And I know that people who've traveled with us are still in touch with other members and look forward to their company on future trips. So that's our goal here at Wheel and Anchor. My name is Gordon Dreger. I am the founder of Wheel and Anchor, but I couldn't do all this stuff without my team. In the background, Joel Curry, who is our marketing person and does all of our technical support as well. And Paula, of course, that I know many of you have spoken to. There's Paula right underneath me on the screen down there, or maybe you're above, I don't even know. Paula is our senior trip specialist and deals with all of your inquiries and bookings and so on and all the rest of it. And then, of course, we have a bigger team than that, but that's the ones who are most relevant today. And we are going to take you, as people who are interested in Sicily, this very unique part of Italy, the ball to Italy's boot, as it were. And I'm going to be taking you on a little digital tour around the north coast, specifically Cefalù, which is where we're headed next March. Our LiveAway programs, the direction that we're headed in, is all about spending a prolonged period of time out of Canada during the sort of winter and early spring months when the weather back home kind of sucks. And I know that many people travel south of the border. Given events of the last couple of years, people are looking for alternatives. Where else can I go? Where can I spend some time and get away from the ugly part of winter to someplace where the climate is nice and where I can also learn something, be enriched, and have fun along the way. And so we have established numerous LiveAways that go from January already in Thailand, in Koh Samui, and then Bali, Indonesia, and then continuing on in February, March, April in Madeira, Cyprus, Malta, here to Sicily, the Amalfi Coast that we introduced. And you can, of course, combine many of these LiveAways together. And that's what more and more people are deciding. Oh, well, I think I'd like to do 2 weeks here, or a month here and 2 weeks thereafter. And so here is, and you'll find this now in our program itineraries, a list of all of the European LiveAway options that begins, as I mentioned, in February, goes all the way through to the beginning of May. And so to the extent that two programs are run back to back, you could, for example, go to Cyprus for 2 weeks and then go here to Cefalù, or you could go here in Cefalù and continue on to the Amalfi Coast, or you could do Cyprus, the second part of Cyprus and the Amalfi Coast. So there's a whole bunch of combinations that are possible. Our minimum program stay for a LiveAway is 4 weeks. But again, you can do that in 2 times 2 weeks or any combination beyond that. So that's how it all works. If you have detailed questions about that, of course, that's what Paul is here for. Of course, me as well, to answer any questions about how the combos work and how the travel arrangements and so on and so forth. But right now, let's focus on Cefalù, a beautiful shot here from the one of the vantage points along the coastline in Cefalù. This is such a beautiful town. Let me give you the quick geography lesson on it, because as I mentioned, Sicily is roughly shaped like a triangle, north coast along here that goes over to Palermo from the Strait of Messina, which is which separates Sicily from the mainland. The east coast, down on the southeast coast, Ortigia, Syracuse, where we're going to be spending the first couple of weeks of our LiveAway in Sicily, and the north coast here. And they're really quite different. And, when we look at the world map, we think of Sicily as it's a small island, but it's anything but small, which is the reason that we divided this up into two parts, because there's so much ground to cover. And even, quite honestly, even these two parts, even though we cover a lot of ground, there's still so much more in Sicily that, you'd need to spend literally months there. But I think that we've picked two of the best spots. And so, as I say, the first 2 weeks that we introduced some time ago to Ortigia, which you access through Catania Airport, one of 3 airports in Sicily. And the second part, so you either, stay for the first part in Ortigia, and then come, for those that will continue on and join us, we'll travel overland a few hours to reach Cefalù. Or if you are coming just for this part, and then continuing on with us to the Aeolian Islands, which I'll talk about in a second, and then on to the Amalfi Coast, you would fly into Palermo, a town that you've probably heard of before, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So that's how the program works. And of course, all of this information is in the program itinerary that will be sent out to you, together with a copy of the replay of this webinar tomorrow. So looking at Cefalù, I want to just share with you a few of the things, a few images about what a stay there is all about. And what I love about this town is that it is, in the summertime, it's actually really busy. So I was actually there at the end of May, beginning of June, so just about 6 weeks ago. And it was a hustle bustle, because it's quite a popular beach town. It has a beautiful long sandy beach, a couple of them actually. But what I like about the town is that, similar to Ortigia or Syracuse, it has these narrow cobblestone streets that run up and down from the Norman Cathedral that we look at in this picture from behind, that is about 1,000 years old. And you really get the feel like you are in Sicily, like that character of a village, that grittiness that you have. It's not as sort of picture perfect as you have in a place like Florence, because people still hang their laundry from the balconies on the streets, and it's that authentic feel that I really love about Sicily, and particularly towns like Cefalù. And so we will do an orientation tour, as we do on all of our programs, so you know what's where and how to get around and what are the things to see while you spend the time there. But of course, history is an important part of spending time in Sicily, and specifically here, we will organize it with our local guide Esther to show you how this town has evolved. They say that it dates back to as old as 400 BC, but specifically since the building of that cathedral, the Norman Cathedral that you see in the photo here 1,000 years ago, how all this town has evolved. And the crossroads that it played, Sicily with its location in the Mediterranean, and all the people that sort of passed through over the centuries. And it's quite a fascinating history. Where this picture is actually taken from, there's also a Norman castle on top of a cliff, and we'll see other pictures of it. You can see it in the background here, which is a great place to go for a walk. As long as you're not too afraid of heights, because you can actually stand at the edge of that cliff. I took some amazing pictures myself. I did one of my newsletters there when I was there back at the end of May. The walking is fantastic. And let's face it, it's what a lot of our members just love to do. Sure, we walk a lot at home, for exercise and fresh air, but here you just get a completely different perspective of the place. Weather permitting, we will definitely do a boat trip along the coastline, so you can admire the northern coast of Italy, which differs quite a bit from the eastern coast in that it's quite mountainous. So you've got these, very forested mountains that are in behind, running all along the coast from Palermo all the way over to Milazzo and the Strait of Messina. And with these sort of towns that look like you see here, Cefalù, that have this very distinct character to them. So we'll hopefully be able to do that by boat. Odds are pretty good at that time of the year that the weather should be quite nice. We will make a trip into, of course, Palermo itself. And here's an important point with our LiveAways as well. So as you know, or as you may not know, if you're new to this kind of a program, we include in the trip an activity credit of $1,000 in this particular case for the 2 weeks. If you book early, you get a bonus $200 to get $1,200, which covers a whole bunch of the excursions that we include. But with Palermo, for example, we are going to go there by train because it's like literally just under an hour away by train. So it's super easy to get to. And obviously going with Esther and with us, we show you the highlights. We show you the largest opera house in Sicily. We show you where the food markets are, and we'll give you a wonderful glimpse of the city. We'll have a great lunch at a place that we've picked out. We're known for having great restaurants where we enjoy our meals. But one day hardly doesn't really even do the city justice. So you may very well want to go back. And once you've done it once on an excursion with us, you just hop on the train, you go yourself, because when you've been there, you'll get comfortable. Palermo is, contrary to whatever image you may get conjured up in your mind about the past, and of course Sicily with its reputation as the haven for the mafia in Italy, it is completely different than that now. It is very safe, so you can walk around pretty much any time of day or night and explore this really fascinating city that as well sits on the shoreline and has some great geographical features or geological features like the mountain that you see in the background there. Not far outside of Palermo is another beautiful town, a Norman architecture town called Monreale. It too has a UNESCO listed cathedral, much like the one in Cefalù, which was both cathedrals were listed by UNESCO back about 10 years ago. And so it's a wonderful place in the hills outside of Palermo to really understand the Norman influence that played such a role for centuries from the early part of the 12th century when they first came to this area and, as I say, exercised some influence. So beyond, of course, the history, which is everywhere, we also have the wonderful nature and the vineyards. We're all probably familiar with Sicilian wine, the most popular grape being Nero Tavola. If you haven't had some, definitely worth a try. But there's so much diversity to the viticulture in Sicily as well. And one of the spots that we'll go is a wonderful abbey in a town called Castelbuono, which is in the Parco del Madoni, the Madoni National Park that is just outside of Cefalù. So we drive about 30 minutes up into the mountains, visit this beautiful village, go to an abbey where they produce their own wines and have also an excellent restaurant where we'll enjoy a wine tasting and sort of a gourmet lunch. And again, this is part of the experience that we like to do, is combining the wine, the culture, the history. It all is part and parcel to what these LiveAways are all about. Of course, ceramics. If you haven't been to Sicily before, you will immediately be taken by their ceramics, particularly the pineapple looking things like you see in red and green here. That is an icon of Sicily. But all of the wonderful, colorful ceramics that are still today handmade in many cases, also factory made, but I mean, the best stuff is handmade. We will take a tour through one of the towns that is famous for its ceramic production. And you will undoubtedly want to take a souvenir with you because it really is quite brilliant. And again, I love these parts of the world like this, where you get to experience and actually take home some authentic handicrafts. I almost hate to use the word handicrafts because these days at half the time it means made in China, but certainly not here in the ceramic producing region of Sicily. Again, a large part of the experience of our LiveAways and more, we're putting more and more focus on this based on our experience from this past year, is on walking and hiking and getting out into nature. And so Cefalù is right on the coastline. So just to the south is the Madoni National Park, which is a huge area of beautiful rolling hills and mountains and forests with lots of hikes and walks. So we will offer at least a couple of guided hikes and walks. But the beauty here again is that you can just walk right outside the door. You don't necessarily need to buy an excursion from us. Of course, you know, when you go out for the first time, it's nice to have somebody that shows you a little bit the lay of the land and where things are. But we like to organize the type of thing that you can just come along or go off on your own, because as I say, it's perfectly safe and everything is very, very accessible. So that's something else we'll do. We'll also take some excursions a little further afield to Agrigento, which is more on the southwestern part of Sicily, but a city that is very much worth visiting because it's actually the oldest town in Sicily, dating back to some 2,600 years. Again, something interesting that if you weren't already aware of it, obviously the Greeks played a huge influence in the original sort of discovery and the population of Sicily in the centuries before Christ. And Agrigento is probably the greatest monument to that because it has these incredible temples. But on top of that, it also has a beautiful coastline with this white Mara, it looks like limestone cliffs that just melt into the sea. So you have a combination of some very scenic coastline that looks very different than what you'll find in the north, as well as some incredible history with these temples. Another thing that we're doing differently here, another program that we're offering, is an opportunity to learn Italian. And I know, again, in talking to many members over the last, particularly over the last 6 months, and you know, since we started Wheel and Anchor, is that, you know, people are looking for a way to further themselves, further their education. So I've been in touch with, in fact, I met with the owners of a very nice Italian language school. So for those that are interested in delving a little bit more into the culture, of course, the best way is by learning a language. And so we have a couple of different options. You can join a course, spend a couple hours a day, or on a more sporadic basis, go in and have courses with very small groups. So sort of anywhere between 3 and 6 people, and actually learn Italian. I think it would be kind of fun. I kind of like to do it myself. One of those languages I always wanted to learn, but never really got around to it. So what better time than on a LiveAway? In addition to all those, there's other excursions that we can and will likely do, but we'll sort of determine that as we get closer to the date, because it also depends what's happening in and around town. We also plan stuff quite spontaneously based on events and so on that are going on in the destination that we're visiting. So let me tell you for a couple of minutes a little bit about the accommodations. We have 2 options here. Our primary property is a very modern looking building, so it doesn't look very Italian here, but it's a very comfortable hotel that I found right on the beach. So literally all of the rooms look out over the sea, which is always a bonus. And again, right across the street, you can be at the beach. And not that the weather is necessarily super beach friendly at the end of March, beginning of April. It may very well be. The sea will be cool. Some people will undoubtedly go for a swim, if I know some of our members. But again, the main thing is that it is here you get a view from the hotel looking out at, not all the rooms look towards town. Some of them look the other way, which is a beautiful view, a little bit more natural view. And you get a sense of what the coastline is all about. There aren't hardly any sunbeds and so on out there. This is obviously a shot that's taken in the summertime, but the color of the water, the town does look like this at pretty much any time of the year. And so again, in keeping with our philosophy at Wheel and Anchor, this is a suite hotel, in fact, one of the only ones in town. And so you've got very comfortable rooms with a balcony, with a living area and a couch, as well as a kitchenette that comes fully equipped. So you're able to, cook a little meal or something like that. The experience of our guests on LiveAways we ran this year was that We feed them too much when we're out on our excursions for lunch. So people are like, oh, I don't want to go out for dinner again. So a lot of our members just say, I just want to cook a little soup or a little, just a little something light for dinner. And so it's handy to have those kitchen facilities. And the Astro Suite Hotel that we is our primary accommodation there is literally about a 7-minute walk from the old historic center of town. However, I have secured another property. This is owned by a couple that I met, lovely people. They have a small B&B called BM Suites, and this is right in the middle of town. So this is on the pedestrian street in the middle of the old town, which means you're about a 5-6 minute walk from the beach, roughly less than 10 minutes to the other hotel. So they're not far apart. That's on foot. This one is, the advantage to this one is very modern inside, super comfortable beds. And the special feature that they have in this hotel is that they have these special ceilings that they're painted. So they light up like a starry sky at night. It's really phenomenal. I've never seen anything quite like it. Apparently they're the only one in Sicily that has that. So here we have oversized studio rooms. We have 2 that are a bit smaller, so ideal for solo travelers, and we have 2 that are a little bit larger. And then all of those apartments share a kitchen, a little outdoor patio area. So again, they're situated right in the center of town. So that's the advantage there. They are on the first floor, or the second floor, as we would call it. So there is a flight of stairs that one has to get to go up there. Otherwise, I think this is a wonderful choice as well, particularly if you have a couple of couples that want to share accommodation, because there's only 4 rooms in here. And so this is something a little bit special. So that covers off the Cefalù part. Again, the more details are available in the program itinerary that you will get shortly. But I want to take a couple of minutes and tell you about the extension. So this is something a little bit different that we're doing after this LiveAway. We've created a gap between our Cefalù program and our Amalfi Coast program. So one can do this as a post tour or an in-between tour or a pre-trip to the Amalfi Coast. And this is a visit to the Aeolian Islands. And I should have stuck the map in here in case you didn't remember, but the Aeolian Islands is a group of volcanic islands that are situated just to the north of the north coast of Sicily. I visited there. I made an extra trip, as I say, just at the beginning of last month. And wow, this place is really quite remarkable. We will stay specifically on the island of Salina. So these are all volcanoes. One of them, the island of Stromboli, is still an active volcano. I actually climbed halfway up it and watched the sort of the fire and brimstone coming out of the top. Salina, where we will stay, is an idyllic paradise, which has 2 inactive volcanoes on it, that for those that are up to a good hike, it's not a difficult, but it is, it does take a couple hours to climb up to the summit, and you have a beautiful view. If you don't like to hike, we will be planning some excursions around the island. We're just going to stay here for a few nights. We're going to visit some vineyards. The island is known for producing its own wine. We're going to visit some beautiful coastal spots like you see here in the picture. This is a picture I actually took myself when I was there. We have a lovely hotel called the Signum, which is an excellent hotel with a very fine restaurant that we're going to be staying at for a couple of nights. So we will leave here, travel to Milazzo, which is on the north coast, about an hour and a bit from Cefalù, take the ferry over to Salina, spend a couple of nights here. And then for those that are continuing on or flying back for that matter, we'll take the overnight ferry from here directly to Naples. And then that is your point of either continuing on to the Amalfi Coast or flying back home from there, or continuing on your journey elsewhere in Italy. So this is a view from one part of the islands looking over to Stromboli in the background, which looks like a volcano and is in fact an active volcano. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful spot in Italy that not many people from Canada are aware of. Following this program, which I'm not going to go into that on this webinar, we released this program a couple of weeks ago. is our Amalfi Coast program, where we're going to be staying in Sorrento, which is sort of the gateway to the Amalfi Coast. And so if you are interested in that program, interested in perhaps combining Cefalù with Amalfi, then you can either look at the replay of the webinar or request a copy of our program itinerary, which we will be happy to send along, and you can combine those two programs and put the Aeolian Islands in between, and that would be an incredible Italian holiday, let me tell you. So I'll touch on a few small details. Of course, all of the information is in the program itinerary that we are going to send you tomorrow. So just to give you a sense of the program, so the prices in here, of course, in Canadian dollars as usual. This is for 2 weeks, breakfast every day, $1,000 of activity credit, the host, and you know, all the other things that we include in our program. So you get a sense of the pricing here, and that, as I say, includes all those things. The accommodation, the breakfast, the activity credit towards all the excursions, a SIM card for your stay, which helps to enable us to communicate as a group. People found that super useful because we set up a special chat group and are therefore able to facilitate things among members. Yeah, that's what's in the program. Of course, the only thing that is left over is your airfare, which we're happy to facilitate for you, as well as cancellation and travel medical insurance. Getting over there, regardless of which combination you're doing at the moment, if you're flying this summer, I would say something different, and you'll find out from about that in my my newsletter this weekend. But projecting towards next early spring, so when this trip is happening, prices still seem to be fairly normal. So this gives you an indication of what some of the price points are to fly over there. You would fly likely via a gateway like Rome or Frankfurt or Munich, for example, to get into Catania or Palermo, depending on whether you're going to join us for you know, which of the parts in Sicily. So again, we can provide some more information on that, and it is in the additional information that we send you together with the booking forms. If you sign up right away, and we already have a number of people that are interested in this program because they've already signed up for the first part, we will give you an additional $200 in activity credit for those that sign up before the end of August, assuming you take at least 2 LiveAway segments. So now is the time to answer any questions that you might have about this program. Paula, I guess maybe a couple of questions have come in. If you don't think of any now, but you have some 10 minutes from now, obviously, please drop us an email or give us a ring. And so, Paula, any questions have come in?
Sure. So a standard question, members are asking, what would be the weather? The
weather, yes.
At this time of year.
Mention this from the get-go. So good question. So yeah, the weather, this would be similar to, you know, what the weather that we would have in late April, early May. So typically in Sicily in end of March, beginning of April, the temperature is usually between 16 and 20 degrees. Although lately they told me this year it was already even a bit warmer. You know, climate change is, I suppose, good if you're going to the Mediterranean, maybe not so good in other cases. But I would count on typically the temperatures during the day being between 16 and 20 degrees. In the nighttime, it definitely cools down, maybe a bit cooler than that, sort of 12 to 15 degrees would be sort of the average for this time of the year. They do get some rain in late March, early April, but not, it's, as you'll see when you go there, and even from the pictures, it's a relatively arid climate there. So they don't get tons of rain. So you may get the occasional passing shower, but the weather's quite lovely. And it's mild, but it's not hot. And so it's quiet because the real beach season sort of starts the beginning of June. And that's when, as I say, when I was there, you know, it was already quite busy. So that's what's nice about enjoying it at this time of the year. It's pretty quiet. Anyway, long answer to a short question.
It's good. It's such a variable that is out of our control. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always
absolutely.
good
But it's going to be better weather than at home in Canada, I can tell you.
That's all that matters, unless you like the winter. I have another question that's come in with all the various liveaways. And if someone is trying to decide between the two parts of Sicily in combination with maybe another destination,
Yeah.
what would you say are the main differences between the two options in Sicily?
Between the two options in Sicily, what would I say are the differences? So Ortigia is a little bit bigger of a town. So it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more touristic in the sense that there are more retail. There's more shopping. There's more there's more retail shops, more restaurants. It's a little bit more polished. Although when I say polished, I'm hesitant because in Sicily, nothing is polished. Everything in Sicily is a degree grittier and a degree dirty is the wrong word, but it's more it's
Authentic?
less polished than what you'll find in Florence, in Tuscany, or in even in Rome, where you go into the central parts and sort of everything is almost perfect. And here things are a little bit more earthy and down to earth. And so between the two, Ortigia is the more polished. It's like Taormina is one of the excursions we do. That is the fanciest resort town in in Sicily, and it looks very touristy, which is part of the reason why we didn't stay there. It's also way more expensive, and it just doesn't really justify the cost. Cefalù, on the other hand, is a bit smaller than Syracuse. The scenery is, I think, prettier in Cefalù because you have the mountainous coastline, whereas Ortigia, the area around Syracuse, is relatively flat or low rolling hills, with the exception of Mount Etna, the volcano that's off in the distance. And yeah, that what I would say are the major differences. So again, if you're looking for the more smaller town, at this time of the year, quieter, less touristic sort of experience, then I would say Cefalù. Whereas Ortigia is a little bit busier. I mean, they're all quiet at this time of the year, which is why we go now when it's out of the main tourist season. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yeah, no, those are always challenging when you're trying to consider and compare amongst all the good options.
And I think if you go to one, you'll say, oh, I should have gone to the other. But, I realize not everybody can go to both every year, but, maybe you'll say, well, I'm going to do this and this year, and maybe next year, you can always go back. Think about it that way. We're making our liveaway so people love the idea. And I know that most of the people that came with us this year are already, if they haven't already booked, they're planning to book one of these trips for next year because they had such a great time. So you don't have to do it all in one go.
But some are trying.
Well, I understand that. Some people came for 2 months this year and will come 2 months next year, and that's fine too.
Yeah, definitely. We have another question that's come in here from Dan asking about the accommodation, if there is a separate bedroom and to the living and kitchen area.
Yes, the bedroom is it's a separate bedroom and living room. And I see that Dan asked as well, is if there are any 2-bedroom suites available. There aren't. They only have 1-bedroom suites in the Astro Suites. There is a couch bed, like a pull-out couch in the living room. So theoretically, you could put another person in there. They're comfortable. They're better than the ones we have at home. I don't necessarily recommend that. If you are thinking about a 2-bedroom type situation, then, taking 2 of the suites and the BM suites might be the option. There'll be 2 other apartments there, but yeah, unfortunately, I wish all of the accommodations that we have everywhere are available everywhere, but they aren't. And I sort of scoured the town for what there was, and this was the best thing available. So that's what we have.
Perfect. Yeah. Especially for a longer stay, a pullout might not be the most ideal option, or
that's why space. I don't generally, they say, oh, you can put 4 people in here. I'm like, no, we don't do that. It's for 2 weeks for 2 people. It's great. It's super comfortable. It's all you need.
Yeah. Perfect. That's everything so far.
Okay, good. All right. Well, on that note, then please do let us know if you have any questions. Join us next week. where we are finally relaunching our Majestic Fjords of Norway trip that is going to happen in May of 2023. It's been a long road to get here, but we finally got here. So please do join us if you're interested at all. This trip is going to be available at a relatively special price because it's a long story as to how we got there. But the prices from 2024 and beyond are going to be considerably more expensive for various reasons. So if you've ever thought about going to the fjords of Norway, this is one of my favorite places. They're all my favorite places, but come have a look next week on July 14th. And let us know if you have any other questions. And Paula has put the link to next week's webinar in the chat box if you didn't see it. Thank you all for joining me today, and have yourselves a wonderful week. And I will look forward to catching up with you next week if you join our webinar next week. Happy travels, happy summer, and take care of yourselves.